Welcome everyone, good afternoon and welcome to Makers Demo Day. Today is the final day of the 12 weeks of bootcamp with the February cohort of apprentices with us and Makers. And in a way, it's also the first milestone in the apprenticeship journey before going into placement and going into the world of professional software development. I must say that I'm quite impressed by the level and by what they've all accomplished so far. Before joining Makers as a coach, I was myself a professional software developer for some years, but I've personally never done such an intensive bootcamp as I did. So I can only imagine how challenging it must be to learn what it is to be a professional developer and everything that comes with it in just about 3 months. So you have to also remember that before doing the course, most of them had no programming experience at all or very little. And whether or not you're a software developer yourself, you can still easily picture how challenging it might get. Every single week for the past 12 weeks, they had tons of new things to learn. So purely technical things such as programming languages, paradigms, practice, frameworks, tools, but also teamwork skills such as communication, collaboration, code reviews, agile teamwork planning, all those things that make great software engineers and great teams. And every single week, they had something new of this to learn and to apply. And just when they thought that the week was finished and that they could like relax and breathe for a bit, then the next week there was a new things to coming of things to learn and discover and new challenges to face just from the next Monday. And finally, during those last 2 weeks, they had the chance to put in practice all of those things. They had to build their own project in teams and come up with their own ideas, do their own planning, specify their own features and user stories, and then build it. Just like you would expect a team of professional software developers to do, working together in what we call the real world. Some of them even decided to go into uncharted territories and to build their project with tools and technologies that are not even covered in the course, such as Python, WebSockets, React, 2D game engines. So they also needed to learn those new things while building their project, which makes things even harder. So if all of this sounds very challenging, it's simply because it is. And before we move on to the presentations themselves in a moment, I just want to appreciate that and to appreciate the growth mindset that they all have to embrace during the 3 months at Makers to achieve their goals and to build those projects and to reach the levels they're all at today. All right, let's move on. So today, for this presentation, we'll be using the normal Zoom meeting format, which means that after each team's presentation, you'll be able to use the Zoom reactions button at the top of your window, bottom of your window, sorry, to virtually applaud and praise each team and to show how much you've enjoyed learning about their project. So you can use the reaction button, as I said, at the bottom of the Zoom window to do that. You can also use the chat if you prefer to write a text message there. And also at the end of each presentation, teams will be able to take a few questions from the audience, but just 1 or 2 so we don't overrun too much on the schedule. You'll be able to also use the raise your hand feature on Zoom, which is also at the bottom of your window, so the team will know that you've got a question for them at the end. All right, enough of me talking. Let's go into the presentations themselves. So let's introduce the first team. So the course can get quite overwhelming and quite challenging, and there's a lot of work to do. But after work comes like chill time, relax, and I guess rest. And what's best to relax and to chill than to play games? And so that's exactly what the first team decided to go for. And they built a game to relax after the massive work they've done on the past 12 weeks. So Team Earth, over to you.
Hello, everyone. We are Team Earth. And our project is called Slate Sliders. So Team Earth is myself, Renee, Richard, and Justin. And we chose to make a game. We spent a lot of time on the whole Maker's journey, working on web apps. And so we thought we'd create a game to kind of push ourselves and take ourselves out of our comfort zone. And because of that, we also chose to use Ruby because it was a language that we had used since the start of the program. So we were all a bit more comfortable with it. And then we spent a lot of time deliberating which game we should choose. And we thought about like a classic game, maybe Slake or a card game. But we chose Slate Sliders because we thought it was a game that we would all play in real life. yeah, and we were inspired by the game Speed Tiles. So Richard will do a short demo for you.
Hi guys, so this is our game called Slate Sliders, as Renee's previously mentioned. Aim of the game is basically to match the pattern that you see in the top right-hand corner to the main pattern in the center of the screen. You can basically do this by easily moving around each individual slate. You can't click and drag. It's more of using the arrow keys to move the blank slate around. The inner pattern that you see surrounded by the white border needs to be matched up to the pattern on the right. So if I just demo this now, and you'll be able to see how it is played. Okay, and as you can see, you had a winner. We also had a restart button and a close button just to take you back to the main menu. We've now pass over to Renee, and she'll talk to you about the challenges that we had in the first week.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting couple of weeks for us as Team Earth. I mean, our initial planning phase wasn't as smooth as maybe we would have liked it to go. We did struggle a little bit finding a kind of team rhythm and gelling together in the beginning. It did take us a little bit of time to kind of work together in terms of different communication styles and finding our rhythm, but we were able to do that in the end, which was great. We definitely underestimated the complexity of what we were trying to create. We were very ambitious. And I think as we went along, we realized that it was maybe a bit more of a challenge than we had first anticipated. But that I feel like made it more fun. So yeah, so we ran out of time to add as many features as we would have liked. And definitely working as a team of 3, which was the smallest size group that we had worked on throughout the process, was another kind of challenge. It was definitely a more intimate working environment than we were used to throughout the program.
Okay, so what went well? As you can say, as Renee previously mentioned, the first week was really hard to just gel as a team. So we basically overcame that by, just knuckling down. We recognized that we had a task in our hands, so we had to just go out. We had a really good pairing session, and I think we just kicked off from there, really. So we just reorganized, went over the plan again, rewrote our schedule. The understanding of Ruby 2D, because we didn't have much time to actually understand that we felt like that was like a new language in its own, even though it was just a library. But I felt like we adapted to that really well. Didn't have any major issues with committing any changes, pushing any changes up to our remote server. So yeah, no issues with using version control. So we didn't lose like any projects and have to backtrack. So I think that was like a major key that we didn't really, that went smooth. Delegation of tasks, like I said, the first week was a struggle. Second week just went nicely, really. We knew what we was doing, who was doing what. Everybody was accountable for everything. Our MVP objectives, ideally, we wanted to get that finished by the Friday of the first week. But unfortunately, we didn't get it done to the Monday, but we made sure that we smashed it on the Monday and moved on from there. So ultimately, the takeaway from this project is just a huge understanding of Ruby as a whole, the Ruby 2D library, and just working as a team. I think we've really done well, making a comeback.
Yeah, so I think this slide is about what we maybe had imagined our game to look like towards the end, or if we had more time, the things that we maybe would have included would have been a timer, so that maybe you had a certain amount of time to play the game to make it a little bit more difficult, a main menu with some settings to change the volume, and different modes. So we could have had like a button to change into dark mode or light mode, whatever, and then also a leaderboard. We had considered having like, again, this would have worked with the timer. So you could have had maybe the quickest speed you did it and been able to revisit that. and also some sound effects when you're moving the slates around the board.
Yeah. The game looks quite simple, so it might be worth cloning it and taking a look at the code. There's a lot of hidden complexity, and it's quite common with designing games that's the case. So you have to be very careful, even adding additional features. There's so many things, variables that could be unaccounted for. I think it was great working with the coaches. They were really supportive, helped us to think about solutions and stuff like that. Do you have any questions for the team?
Yeah, I've got one. So what was the decision behind the choice to go for Ruby 2D? Was that something that was chosen out of a number of things, or where did that come from?
We felt like there was a lot more resources online. There was like a Ruby 2D website, and literally a lot of the information was there. So, and it looked real clean, neat, easy to read. So we was kind of choosing whether to go with Gosu or Ruby 2D, and we just thought, you know what, let's go with Ruby 2D because everything's there online, and it just felt clean and easy to read.
Also, I would add to that, Richard, that we had spoken to some of the coaches about it, and they said that a lot of teams previously on different cohorts had used Ruby 2D. And so we thought that potentially if we did get stuck, that would be another resource that we could tap into, maybe contact somebody and get some help.
Actually, I found more resources for Gosu, but Ryan suggested that previous cohorts had used Ruby 2D, so we went with that. There's actually 2 books on Gosu.
Good choice out there then. Did you think about being able to kind of drag the slates around or be able to swipe them on a phone or something, that sort of thing? Did that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of when we first started. As I said, the Speed Tiles game was our sort of inspiration, and that was a mobile app where you would play it using your finger to swipe the tiles around. We did have a go at looking into that kind of thing and decided that for as we were going along, that was one of the things that were a bit more complex. So we kind of figured out a way to play the game in a different way that would make it easier for us to code, and then potentially that would have been something that we would have revisited later on.
Good stuff, thank you.
All right, thanks, Pete, for your question, and thanks, Tim, for your answers and your presentations. That was really great. So please, people, give them a round of virtual praise and applause with the Zoom reactions, because they totally deserve it. Building a game is definitely not easy, and they kind of learned it the hard way during this last week, but they kind of overcame the obstacles, and I'm super proud of what they did. And I've also tried the game this morning, and it's actually quite addictive. And I'm not going to go into that dangerous place, and so not get any walk down. So yeah, but definitely a nice little game. All right, thanks, Tim. Let's go on the next team now. So we spent quite a lot of time because of the pandemic, and also thanks to that lovely London weather we have right now. And if, like me, you always struggle to find things to do and movies to watch on the endless stream of movies coming onto Netflix, the next team definitely has you covered and has built a project to help you with that. So Team Wind, over to you now.
Thank you, Leo. Tell me if you can see my desktop. Is that all visible?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, over to you, Callum.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. We are Team Wind, which is myself, Callum, Maria, and Rahat, and we've built a web application called Night In. So firstly, what's the purpose of this? Well, as Leo said, if you're anything like us, you spent the last year or so stuck indoors, wondering what you're going to do with your spare time, and then that spare time extends over days, weeks, and months. So how about a Night In? What is Night In? Night In is a web application that allows users to create their ideal evening in. So a user can register their dietary and movie genre preferences and get suggestions for both all in one place. I'll briefly look over the user journey just before we go over the demo. So these are the steps of the user experience. Initially, you'll be greeted with a homepage, and upon entering, the user will be prompted to register with a username and password. If indeed they've already done so, you can simply just log in. From there, they'll be presented with a list of preferences for dietary requirements, as well as a choice of movie genres. And then based on these selections, a search form will be pre-populated with these choices. The user is able to change these before ultimately getting the results back, but your initial preferences are stored in the search form, which can be expanded upon, let's say if you've got any allergies or any particular ingredients you prefer to stay away from. And then once the user is happy with their selection, they can bring up a list of results that kind of fall within their search criteria. And then for the more indecisive amongst us, there's also a surprise me function, which will randomly generate a single movie and a recipe to complete your night in. I'll pass you over to Maria for the demo.
Hey everyone, I'm Maria. I will do this demo. First of all, this is the landing page of Night In. We enter, and in this case, I'm going to create a new user using a username and a password. I can create an account. And the first page we can see is the preferences page, where as a user, I can state my dietary preferences and my movie genre preferences. In my case, I'm going to choose pescatarian, and I'm going to choose sci-fi. And then I can see these preferences being reflected on this page here. Now, if at any point I decide that, oh, I don't like sci-fi anymore, I'd like to change that, I can go back and edit my preferences like so. And again, see them reflected. Now, the user doesn't have to use any preferences, but it is better for a more personalized user experience. And now to the main event, the perfect night in. So the perfect night in is created for me by taking into account my preferences that I have stated, which are pre-populated, as you can see in this form. And then in order to make it more personalized, I can choose some further details to enter into this form. For example, I can search by director, actor, or producer. I will choose Ridley Scott because I like his work. And then I'm going to go for a particular cuisine. I'm going to choose Greek. And finally, I've got a peanut allergy, so I'm going to choose that as well. And then I search for the night in, and hopefully I will get personalized suggestions, as you can see. I can see some films here by Ridley Scott, and I can see some recipes that fulfill the requirements that I have set. If I want to learn more about the suggested recipes, I can click and be taken to the Spoonacular website where we took our recipes from and learn a lot more about them. Same for movies. If a movie catches my attention, for example, Alien, I can click on it and be taken to the TMDB website where I can find out a bit more and read more about this movie. Now, as Callum mentioned earlier, if I am extremely lazy and I don't really want to set any preferences, I don't really want to think about what I want to do tonight, I can just click the surprise me button, and that creates some random recipe and movie suggestion for me. I can also see some more details here about the recipes. For example, this one is vegetarian. So this was the demo. I will go back to the presentation now and pass it over to Rahat, who will talk to us about the technical stuff.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, everyone. My name is Rahat. So for the language, we decided to use Python because Maria loves Python. I'm joking. So we decided to use it because, yeah, she does love it, but also because we wanted to use something new we haven't used so that we could learn about it. And for a framework, we just used the popular one of the most popular ones, Flask. For the backend database to save the preferences, we use SQLite and SQL Alchemy, just because there are loads of examples online which you could use for help. For testing, we use PyTest and Cypress. Not any particular reason, Cypress we used it before, so we thought we use it for us to use. And for APIs, as you saw Maria demonstrated, that we used TMDB for the movies and Spoonacular for the recipes. These are massive APIs with loads of data. Just Spoonacular has probably about over 100,000 recipes, and with many endpoints. we would have liked to use more of the endpoints to implement more features, but Maria will talk about more the challenges we faced and why we couldn't. And then we use GitHub for the collaboration to submit our code, to review it, and to merge it, and then pull the code to our local and then work together. We also use, of course, Zoom and Slack for communication constantly. And the final thing is locally hosted. We would have liked to host it on AWS or something else, but again, Maria will talk about the challenges we faced and why we couldn't host it anywhere else. Next slide, please. What went well? Teamwork. Luckily, this is the third project we've been working together. Me, Maria, and Callum. So we kind of knew our strengths and weaknesses, so it was easy for us to delegate tasks. And also communication, it was really smooth. And also great minds think alike. So kind of, it was great to work with these two geniuses. And also learning new technologies. That was one of the plus points that we used. We decided to use Python because we could have, there was a chance for us to learn, think, and implement it. We literally just had learned in a day or two, and whatever we learned, we had to implement it. So there was a challenge. We pushed ourselves, and we're quite happy we did. I will hand it over to Maria now.
Thank you. I'll talk to you a bit about our way of work. So first of all, as Rahat mentioned, we spend a lot of time learning unfamiliar technologies. So some of us had used Python before, some of us hadn't, but everyone had some bit of technology that was unfamiliar to them. So there was a lot of learning and teaching each other. In terms of how our day went, we did daily stand-ups where we set our goals for the day. We also run planning sessions where we plan for new features and how to implement them. Also, we had meetings at the end of the day to talk about what we had achieved during that particular day. Again, as Rahat mentioned, we use GitHub quite a lot. We review each other's code before merging to avoid any conflicts. We managed, thankfully, quite well to not have too many or too major conflicts. Then we also run debugging sessions, which came up quite often because, as you can imagine, there were quite a lot of bugs. And finally, we very regularly communicated over Slack throughout the day. The challenges. So one of the most major challenges was time. Again, as the others mentioned, we would have loved to expand this project a lot more and to maybe host it not locally and to maybe add some more features to it, but time is never enough. And secondly, learning a new tech stack is always challenging, and especially feeling our way around the third-party APIs and their documentation. Then testing. Testing has been, I think, consistently a challenge throughout this course. I think despite the challenges, we've managed to have decent test coverage in this project with unit tests and integration tests. And finally, of course, the bugs. There were loads of them, including a very exciting one that came up yesterday afternoon that only appeared in some browsers, but not all of them. So we called it a ghost bug. Finally, some ideas for expansion. So had we had the time, I think we would have liked to allow the user to save more preferences to make the experience more personalized. So more genres, more dietary preferences would have been nice. And also to allow the user to see which movies and TV programs are available in their own region. So does anyone have any questions for us?
I have a question about the APIs. Do they have any free accounts, or did you have to create one of those accounts to get a limit for the APIs? How is the documentation as well?
I can answer for one of them, and then Rahat can take over for the other one. I was lucky that I was mostly working with the TMDB one, which was both free, and the documentation was not great, but we could manage it. But there was no limit in the requests, which was rather great. On the other hand, Rahat can tell another story about the other.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of documentation, Spinnacle is one of the best ones I found. It had loads of documentation and countless endpoints. I mean, we could have used loads of them, but if we had to have time. But in terms of, so we had about 150 requests per day. So we kind of had to have. I actually made 2 accounts just to cover the course. But yeah, it was a bit of a challenge, but 150 to 300 a day was enough end of the day. So yeah, for now, for this project.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any other question for the team before we move on? Don't think I'm seeing anyone raising their hand. So cool. Thanks, team, for your presentation, and congrats for taking on a totally new language that we didn't cover in the course. It's true that Python love can be tough, and I'm definitely not there yet. So congrats to you. And cool, let's go over to the next team now. So also because of the pandemic, I guess social relationships have been quite hard to manage. And it's been also a struggle to meet new people in this past year. And that's what the next team wanted to tackle as well as a problem. So team Fire, over to you.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Zainab and I'm an apprentice developer at EY. We are on Team Fire, and as Leo said, we want to create a dating app because I feel like that's on a lot of people's minds during lockdown, and we thought it could be kind of cool to recreate something that from scratch pretty much. I'll pass over to Alice to introduce herself as well.
Hello, I'm Alice. I'm also going to be an apprentice developer at the Home Office, and I'll pass over to Precious.
Hi everybody, I'm Precious and I'm also an apprentice at the Home Office. Back to you, Zainab.
Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so we called it DATE, just to stand for the word date, but basically it's supposed to be a web application using the MEN stack, so MongoDB, Express, and Node. And we wanted to go something similar to Tinder. So the idea is you're only choosing the filters such as age and location, and we made it so that it's specific to London. And if a profile catches your eye, you'll like the profile. And if they've reciprocated, then you'll match, and then you'll be able to chat to your match. And if you change your mind, you can unmatch them. And if you then decide you don't want to have them on your account at all anymore, you can block them and they will completely disappear from the site for you. On to Precious.
Thanks, Zainab. So the timeline of the project. So initially we decided to use the MEN stack, which is MongoDB, Express, and Node, because we had previously used it in our other project and we really wanted to build up on that knowledge. So we did consider using React. So we spent about a day and a half learning React. And from this on, we moved on to gathering requirements. So we spent some time looking at user stories and really thinking about what we wanted to build as a product. And from this on, we moved on to product design. So we designed some wireframes, as you can see at the bottom. And this was really good to visualize what we wanted our pages to look like, but it also assisted us in routing a website so we could understand the user journey. And in regards to the coding aspect of it, we did sprint. So we had a sprint was around a day and a half, and we used Trello as a Scrum board. And on Trello, we had tickets, and those tickets were allocated to people in the team. So we knew exactly what everybody was doing. So it minimized duplication of efforts. And we also used GitHub and regularly merged and branched when we were working on things, and also did testing using Jest and Cypress. Next slide, please. So how it went. So in the end, we decided not to use React because we didn't think it was essential for this project, and we didn't really want to spend a lot of time trying to learn a new library and for this to have an impact on the product that we produce. So we thought we would just build upon what we already knew and add additional features. So initially we created a minimum valuable product. So I think you can see the potential dates on the corner of the screen. So that's essentially what we had to start with. So it was a website where you can go and register and log in and post a bio so people can go and see each other's bio on there. And from then on, we built additional feature, which Alice will show you. some of the feature took quite longer than we expected, things like the chat function. So I think initially we thought it was something quite easy to do, but it took us a very long time to get that right. But essentially, overall, we're very happy with the project we produced, and Alice will give you a demo later on, but back to Zainab for now.
Yeah, so I'll cover what went well for us, and I'll split it into three, so planning, implementation, and teamwork. So we made sure that we planned everything before we started. We didn't want to rush into anything and then start coding and realize, oh, wait, hold on, we didn't plan this aspect, and then have to stop. We also designed the wireframes before we started, so we had a visual aid as to what we wanted it to look like rather than figuring it out as we went along. And we also definitely tried to set realistic expectations apart from the chat function in terms of what we could achieve in the period of time that we were given. In terms of implementation, we definitely made sure our use of GitHub was more efficient, so we had more pull requests, so there were less conflicts. We also associated tickets, as Precious mentioned, so we didn't have a lot of overlap, and we paired a lot to work through very difficult tasks. Me and Precious did a lot of pairing to figure out the WebSockets, which was definitely the biggest challenge of the project so far. And in terms of teamwork, we worked together 3 times now, and we worked really well. So we went off independently as well as paired really effectively. We made sure we incorporated everyone's interests so that when we were splitting off to do tasks, people could do what they were interested in, as well as dabble in multiple sides, both back end and front end. And we limited the time we spent debugging, so we didn't waste too much time over a problem that we may not have been able to find the solution for by ourselves. We reached out to the coaches who were amazing throughout. Next slide, please. How we could have improved. So in terms of planning, we should have 100% estimated how long the big features might have taken. So for example, as I referred to the WebSockets, we definitely took longer than we thought. Thanks to Ryan for all the support he gave us. He made us realize that it's not as intuitive as it sounds. And also maybe factored in some more time at the beginning to plan the new technologies that we were going to intend on using. As well as implementation, we definitely could have created less branches so it didn't get as messy as it might have. We also definitely wanted to use React to make it a lot easier, but out of the scope of this project, and potentially deploy it on Heroku in the future. And then in terms of teamwork, definitely we wanted to prioritize tasks more effectively. So if we knew something was going to take a while, we would have done it earlier on in the 2 weeks rather than starting it in the second week. Next slide, please. Over to Alice.
Hello, so I'm now going to take you through the website itself. So I've got a recording of it, so hopefully everything runs smoothly and it doesn't glitch too much on your screen. Right, so like all dating sites, you have to create your account. So we're going to create this account for Lisa. So within our application itself, we've done it so that people can't sign up if they've got the same email address or if they've got the same username, which is on the next slide. So yeah, we've just created a account. We're now going to create a profile. So as you can see, we've got options to select gender, location, who you're interested in. Ideally, we spoke about in the future that we'd like to expand this, but for now, these are the choices we have. We can also upload a photo for our person. So I think here I'm just picking the picture for Lisa, and we're going to write her a short little bio to try and attract the eye of any other users. Once the profile is created, we now have another page where we'll ask Lisa some more questions. And these are some fun questions to try and get to know Lisa a little bit more, and so that other people could see and try and connect with her on another level other than just appearance. So once she's submitted our answers, her account has now been created. So this is the dashboard where she could see her potential dates. And on this page, any profile within the carousel will be men that are also interested in men, men that are also interested in women, as she is a woman who's interested in men. And before we go into that in a bit more detail, we're just going to have a look at her profile. So you can see that she can edit her profile. So if she wants to make any changes, she can also delete her profile. So when she's found the love of her life, she no longer needs to be on this website. She can also add some more photos if she wants to, so that she can, maybe make herself more appealing to other users. She could also view her matches, which is what the page we're on now. And at the minute, because she's just signed up, she has no matches at the moment. So we're gonna do something about that. So we're gonna go back to the dashboard and she's gonna flick through to try and see if there's another person that catches her eye. And that guy is Tommy. So Tommy, when we click on it, we can find a bit more about him. We can have a little look about what he answered for those questions. And if she's still interested, she's going to click the little heart button. But at the minute, because she is obviously new and Tommy probably hasn't had a chance to see her, she won't know whether she's been matched until they get a match. Also, now she's liked Tommy, she can no longer see Tommy in her carousel. We're also going to talk a bit about this fun feature that we created. So it's a take a chance on love. So they can randomly like a person within the database that would have appeared on her carousel, but she won't know who that person is unless they match with her at some point. So it's really jumping in at the deep end there. So we're now going to log out, I think, and go into Tommy's account to make that match happen. So we've also created features so that it knows that if there's like an incorrect password, it will come up with a notification. We can't see that right now. So now if we go to Tom's matches, oh no, we need to find her again first. So we selected North London because that's where she was. And we're going to go through the people in North London. So that was Lisa. I'm going to like it. We now get a notification that she has a match and we can go to my matches to view them. So here you can see that he's got the match now and he could decide that he's changed his mind and doesn't want to match with her again. So he can then click the unmatch button, or if he decides he doesn't want to see her again ever, he can decide to block her. But I think he's going to decide to chat with Lisa. So we can show off the chat function. And so we're also going to log in back as Lisa so that they can have the conversation. Okay, and then now if we go into her matches as well, you'll see that Tommy comes up and then the button to chat with him is also there and they can start the conversation. So as you can see, it persists on both screens and they can have a lovely, lovely time together, getting to know one another on our website. Okay. So now I'll just go through some of the other features that we would have liked to have added if we had a bit more time. So one of the things is, as I mentioned earlier, we've only got the limited options at the minute, so it would have been nice to make the website a bit more inclusive. So yeah, have more options on gender and who you're interested in. It would have also been good to not limit it just to London and allow users to put their like location information in and search for users within a certain radius of themselves. We also thought about certain like methods that we wanted to like encourage users to chat on the app. So one idea we would have liked to have implemented was once they've matched, they've got 72 hours to start the conversation, otherwise they unmatch and they can't speak to them. We'd also like to have added like the ability to log in through things like Facebook or Google and really establish the chat function as the place to have the first date. So not just text, but like GIFs, emojis, like the prompts for like conversations and things like that. So that's our presentation. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Thank you.
Ryan, is your hand up?
It is.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just curious, like, it sounds like you used a lot of new things and old things. I'm just curious, like, what was your favorite thing you learned during this process?
Okay, I'll go first. I think it was really nice to continue using what we'd already used in terms of Node and Express, and sort of getting really comfortable with it compared to the last project. And then additionally being able to explore new things such as many-to-many relationships. Finding out how to get the matches to like link up was difficult, but when we got it done, it was very satisfying. So in that sense, being able to build on what we knew felt like it was quite accomplishing, really. That's how I felt. I don't know about you guys, but you can go for it.
Yeah, I think similar as well, because I think when we did the last project, I think the like button, we had it as a number. So to go from a number to be able to actually put the user ID into arrays and to be able to match, to be able to be able to block. So it was really good. It made us really comfortable using MongoDB and also exploring Socket.io, because it was something completely different to what we've ever done before. So Zeta, but now really, it was a challenge, but it was a good learning experience. How about you, Alice?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it was really good to like learn, well, not learn, but like get really familiar with like Mongoose and MongoDB. I think in the other ones we've touched on it, but with this one I had to do a lot more querying, and I think that was really good to like learn all these like different new syntax. And like I did a bit of the front end, which I hadn't really done before, and like used Bootstrap for that. And it was good to like learn a different aspect that wasn't part of the course. And yeah, really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed working with Precious and Zainab for the past like 5 or so weeks. It's been really great.
Shout out to you too. Amazing team members.
Does anyone has any other question for this team before we move on to the next one? All right, cool. Let's move on to the fourth and last team then. Thanks, team. That was a great project, and I'm sure there was a lot of complexity in there, especially given the real-time features with the chat and everything. Cool. So for the fourth team, we use Trello during the course to help teams manage their tasks and planning and projects. But it looks like the fourth team didn't like Trello that much, so they decided to build their own planning and productivity software. So over to you, Team Card.
Thank you, Leo. So yeah, I don't think we're going to beat Trello, but this was just our take on it. So we were Team Water, but we changed the card because it was appropriate with our names. And what we wanted to do as a group was basically take what we learned previously, like the last group had mentioned with regards to Node, Express, and MongoDB, and we actually wanted to run with React. Sadly, we weren't clever enough to give it up and do something different. So we ended up going fully into React, and then we basically decided that we needed a project to run. So using Trello on the last project, we were able to basically say, we know how that works and it looks nice, so let's create a productivity app for teams who are trying to build projects. So that's what we wanted to do. We actually thought it would be better to continue our learning of JavaScript as well. So this project, we could have gone back and maybe done something with Ruby, but we wanted to carry on with JavaScript. And the reason that we did originally want to use React was because it allows us to completely design a front end from scratch, and also learn along the way, which was the whole point of the process. So to do this, luckily, like some of the other teams have said, we had worked together as a team before, so we already had an idea of people's strengths, and we split up into 2 teams, a back-end team and a front-end team, which was really helpful for us. We also managed to communicate daily. We had stand-ups and stand-downs. We were able to bring together our ideas generally at the end of each day. Sometimes it would be a little bit longer than that. We never had any difficulty merging our work together. And then obviously with what you can see on the screen there, we had an agile software development process. So we included sprints. So we would have sprints where we just worked on our individual projects and our to get the code down. We also had we had no issues with the actual team itself. We all communicated quite well together. No big issues there. And I just wanted to say a big shout out to the coaches, because they would always come in if we were struggling and kind of give us a boost and inject some information into the group. So we were able to progress and kind of break through some barriers that we probably wouldn't have been able to deal with without them. So enough from me, I think. I'm just going to hand over to Dom, who's going to do a bit of a demo and just kind of show you where we were able to get to.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Before I start, can I just check that you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Dom.
Perfect. This is a bit of a running theme. KB and Alan know this, that my Zoom is very temperamental, so that's a good start. Right. So I'm just going to show you where we got to with the app. I think it's a bit of a cliche that it's about the journey, not the destination, but I think that's particularly true in the case of this project. As Alan laid out, really for us, it was 80% learning experience, 20% delivery. So, you know, this is in a sense the least important part, I think, for us of the presentation. But I'll just start off by showing you. Here's one I made earlier in a sense. So this is the sign up screen where obviously you can fill out your details and then you log in. But I'll skip ahead to already being logged in and where I've created a couple of cards so that we can see the functionality in more depth. So you can see I've created a column for KB, for Rob, for Alan, and I can create one for myself. We can create new cards in whichever column we like. So here we go, new card. If I just create two here so that we can see something visually in a moment, then we can pull these cards across wherever we like them. And this is all kind of being updated both on the client side in a store, but it's also hooked up to a database. So it's kind of connecting to both things at once and making this all work in the front end. And then obviously we've got these delete buttons, so we can just delete columns or add them back. And we're also free to rename our columns. So Alan edited, not a very inventive name, but there we go. So we can rename the columns in real time, and our final feature is that you can obviously pick whatever color you like here within reason for a background. So it just works straight away, pretty much just changing the CSS dynamically. And then once you're done, this is all persistent because it's linked up to a database, but once you're done, you can just sign out, and then next time you sign in again, you'll have the same board. I'll pass over to KB now to talk a bit more about the journey and a bit less about the destination. Over to you, KB.
Thanks, Dom. So within our project, there were a few goals that we really wanted to implement. And so it was more so about the learning rather than what we did present at the ending. And even though we've got a really nice front end, the back end itself is quite a lot of work that we put in. So the first thing that we really wanted to do was to create some sort of a user authentication. And this was to allow the users to have their boards that are protected and to also have their user credentials protected. And so on the right side, if you just have a look at the file structure, we've got an ID, which represents the ID of the person that's logged in, the first name, last name, and then their email. But you can see with their password is actually a hashed password. And so that means that us as developers can't actually see your passwords. And so you're protected yourself. The next thing is also something called Java Web Token, which is shortened to JWT. And what that allows us to do is to make sure that all of your boards are protected. And so if someone was just to be able to search up your ID, they wouldn't actually be able to see your boards. And so this is something that a lot of applications on the web actually use to protect yourself as users. The next thing is to have a single page application. And so this allowed our page to render really nicely and to also be very smooth within the transitions as well. So you could see that when the columns were being dragged across and when we're dragging across the different cards, it all happened seamlessly and we weren't refreshing the page. And so React allowed us to do that. And that happened through state management and communicating with the front end and the back end. And so altogether, that allows us to build a really immersive user experience where you feel like everything is slick and smooth. And it also means that the user itself has a very generally good experience just working with our app. And then finally, we worked with RESTful APIs. And so at the start of the slides, you would have seen that we had one crossed out, which was GraphQL. And it was another technology that we're looking to learn with, but we found it very, very hard. And so we were able to also go back to our previous learning from the previous week and build RESTful APIs so that our database and our front end were constantly talking to each other and we're able to have our data persistent as well. And so I'll just give it back to the boys to fill in any blanks that I may have missed, but overall, it was a really good experience with the team working with the project and having a lot of new learnings as well.
Thanks. I'll just add one little thing, KB, which is obviously where we might have taken it next. So I think KB's really set out that we focused quite hard on the way that we designed it. So it's actually fairly scalable and there's all sorts of hidden things in the background in terms of, although you only see one board in the demo, it actually has the capacity to house multiple boards in the back end. So there are additional features that we were kind of part way to building out that, you know, we've done it for another 2 weeks. The sorts of things we were looking at were to be able to have individual project boards where you can just select between multiple boards and have those saved, and various other little bits and pieces like that. So obviously I think probably like all the teams, we started off with grand ambitions, and one of the things that we had to learn as we went along was just what we were going to be able to deliver and what we weren't. And you know, I'm really proud of where we got to, and like KB and Alan have said, you know, massive shout out to the coaches, because like, we definitely wouldn't have got to where we got without Ryan and Leo. But yeah, no, it's been an absolutely awesome learning experience, this project.
Yeah, just like to say just one final thing about a shout out to the guys on the team, because everyone works really well together, and yeah, learning React has been interesting. When you're on your final project and makers have thrown so many different things at us, like Leo has alluded to, we thought we'd take on one more for the final project, and we're quite happy with how it came out. So yeah, it's been really good.
Thanks, Alan. Sounds good. Thanks for your presentation. That was great, and I'm super impressed that you've taken on so many different things at once. And I know that hasn't been easy. So shout out to you for finishing it in time, actually, and overcoming all those obstacles. Cool. Is there any question from the audience for this team?
I've got one. So with the React side of things, what did you use any other kind of like packages alongside that, or on top of that, to get you where you wanted to get to?
We did, yeah. So for instance, for the drag and drop functionality, we knew it would be pretty hefty to code that, for instance, up from scratch. So we used a library called React Beautiful D&D, which allows you to basically take any element and turn it into a draggable element. It still wasn't actually super easy to implement, I wouldn't say, and you know, Alan did a grand job getting that working in the first place. But yeah, we did use a couple of little libraries like that, and obviously I think a few of the others have been alluded to. So the hashing that KB mentioned, that's with something called decrypt. Obviously JWT, the JSON Web Tokens for the authentication, is quite an integral part of it. So pretty much when you see the boards, quite a lot of the data derives from the user token. So when it talks to the back end, a lot of the information about the user gets conveyed via the token because it's encoded in there. And so you don't need to pass as much information either, you know, through the URL string or through through the body of the post requests, you can actually just trust the server to extract it from the header, from the authorization element, and to decode the relevant bits. So I mean, that's definitely been pretty key to it. But by and large, with those exceptions, the other stuff has been more just kind of utility stuff. So I mean, instead of using fetch requests, for instance, we used Axios just to facilitate some of the API calls, and we used a couple of different libraries of that kind. But pretty much, I mean, the real core ones are the ones I've mentioned: the React Beautiful Dragon Protocol, Beautiful D&D, the bcrypt, and the JWT, and the rest of them were more just kind of utilities that I think we could have done without if we'd wanted to, but we just, you know, they made our lives a bit easier.
Thanks very much.
I had a quick question for you. So some people in this meeting may have done some React already, or done like the intro to React video I did, and I'm just curious, as your state gets much more complex, like, can you talk about your journey of like how to manage state in such a big application, and like how you got over that? Like, I know you played with Redux at one point. I'd just love to hear your journey about managing state in a big app.
Yeah, I mean, how we got over that was DMing you, Ryan. Like we were in a bit of a fix, even within the last few days, where we had this problem of, we have the back end and we had the ability to update information there in a similar way to what we'd done in the previous project. So we could ping these APIs, we could just ping particular web addresses with an amount of information and get the database to update on the back of that. So we had that aspect of it, and we had a perfectly well functioning user interface that had zero persistence whatsoever, including persistence within itself, just sort of internally. And this is where the store came in. So there's a really massive file in the client side, so in the kind of browser side of the project, which basically keeps track of a number of variables. For instance, which columns there are, which cards are associated with the columns, which boards there are in the app, and it just pulls those in one big go at the beginning from the database, and then from that point onwards, it tracks every change to the state. So every time something happens, like adding a card, it both goes as a message to the database, but it also updates the state as held by the client side itself, which means that the two halves of the project, the server side and the client side, are pretty much autonomous one from the other. I mean, the server side has no knowledge whatsoever of the client side, and the client side cares about the server side only in as much as it's getting particular responses back by pinging a particular address on the internet. And that's really what the store enabled us to do, to have these kind of two states, the database state and the client side state, and to manage those together. And yeah, that was one of the massive learning points of this whole thing. And I think that only clicked right at the end for all of us. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I think it would be fair to say it pretty much underpins any sort of more complicated apps. It's a prerequisite, I guess, for a lot of the apps we might want to make in future. So we've kind of got that now in the tool belt, at least at that basic level.
Awesome, thanks. That was really informative.
All right, thanks a lot for your questions, and thanks, Tim, for your answer and your presentations. That was great. Like, it's good to see that you kind of overcame those obstacles and that you're out of it with like key learnings that's going to be useful for you in the future, because that's how you learn in the end. Congrats for completing that in 2 weeks as well. I know that wasn't easy. All right, looks like we've done for all the teams. Thank you everyone for attending Demo Day this afternoon, and for giving those virtual rounds of applause to the 4 teams that presented today. I just want to give them again another round of like virtual reactions and praise and applause, because it definitely all deserved it. Thanks for your questions, your feedback, your reactions. It's really important for them to get feedback after all the hard work that they've put into those projects, so I'm sure it really means a lot to them. And finally, I want to address directly to the cohort and to personally thank you, all of you, for your remarkable work and for being a lovely cohort to work with during those 12 weeks. I feel super lucky to have been your coach, and I'm super proud of what you've done and what you've achieved so far. It's been more than a year now that Makers with delivery is, of course, fully remote because of the pandemic. But I sincerely hope that when things get better, you can all come by the Makers building in London, and then maybe we can all meet in real life and not just behind screens. I wish all of you the best luck for your next chapter in your apprenticeship journey, going on placement. And I'm sure that you all be great software developers and that your future teams will be super lucky to have you on board as well. Cool, thanks everyone, and have a great afternoon.